not seen.
Oh, no, I forgot to say.
Yes, I just changed everything. I mean, my next step was to turn it off.
That's right, yes. Thanks.
Welcome to the Brattleboro Citizens Breakfast. And you've all enjoyed the breakfast this morning. We have 4 candidates for 3 seats for state representative covering the town of Brattleboro. If you understood that, you can explain it to me later. But there are 3 districts that comprise the town of Brattleboro for the purposes of representation in the state legislature. District 1, 2, and 3. And we may not do much more explanation on that, except that I'm going to go in reverse numerical order with respect to the districts, just to confuse things, because the representative for District 3 needs to leave at some point, and I want to allow him to do that. So we have today with us, in correct numerical order, Valerie Stuart, who represents District 1. Mollie Burke, the representative for District 2. And Adam Salviani, who is running in District 2 for state representative as an independent. And in District 3, Tristan Toleno. Now I'm going to hand this mic over to Tristan for a presentation on his district and the state legislature.
Good morning, everyone. I know that there's questions to ask, so I probably won't take the full 5 minutes, but I'll just say a few words about what I've been up to, what I do locally, and what I'm interested in at the State House. So first off, I'm Tristan Toleno, representative for District 3, that technically is 1/3 of Brattleboro, but we all work together to represent this community and work together with the Windham County delegation on regional issues, and Senator White is here hiding in the back as well. And in my sort of regular life, I wear a lot of hats. That seems to be the Vermont way to cobble together stuff. And the reason I want to raise these different hats is just because I think it's relevant for what I'm learning about where I think our community challenges are and where our future opportunities are. And so what I do, I'm a chef and caterer. That's one part of what I've done for 20 years now, almost, in Brattleboro. But I also have been working this summer for the 2nd year in a row with the Strolling the Heifers. I've been teaching a culinary training program that's a workforce development program in partnership with Voc Rehab and the Department of Labor. And there we're looking at trying to help area food service establishments get a pipeline of new employees. We're in a world where they're having trouble hiring, and we are working with a population that's chronically underemployed or unemployed. And so that's one piece of it. I am also a co-chair of the Marlborough College Graduate School Management Programs, our MBA programs, and master's level courses in management, and I also teach there. And the reason I raise that is because we're looking at the future of sort of business leadership and entrepreneurial energy, and trying to find and attract people from regional markets to come to Brattleboro to study in a sort of 10 weekends a year, and the rest is online. But building systems that are, or building interest in business and management is a really important part of the puzzle for what needs to happen in this community going forward. And so what do I think that is? I think we're in a situation where we are in a bit of a pivot as a community. We have parts of our economy that have been tremendously robust despite all external pressures. You wouldn't think that we would be so robust. I think the arts community is a perfect example of that. But in general, we are a small, relatively old town with very little not freely available, that's the wrong word, but very little vacant housing, rental housing, that would be attractive to people moving into the area. So we have an interesting situation where In addition to that, the existing businesses that are here are actually forecasting a demand for workers that well exceeds our existing base of employees who are ready to take those jobs. So we have a collision coming that is, we don't have people to replace the incumbent workers as they retire, and we don't have great systems in place that would make it easy for people who are not here currently to come to this community, or for people who left for college and are young and have a young family to come back. And so that's a complex problem. And what I teach at Marlborough College is I teach a course in systems thinking, which is a discipline that looks at complex problems. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about, where are the places that make sense to intervene in this kind of complex problem. And what I will say, and this is where I think the opportunity is actually, is that the solution for this kind of challenge is not from Montpelier. It's not from the federal government. The answers have to come from us. And they have to come from all of us working together to figure out how we are going to try to address the problems that we see in our community, and where the opportunities are to build something special. And there are examples. When I see Stephen is here, I'll single out NUIT as an example. When people have a vision of something really powerful, it attracts interest, it builds capacity, and over time it's added jobs, but it's also added layers and layers of cultural richness that provide a reason for people to live in this community. That's one facet of it, but we have to also then have housing, we have to have other innovation happening simultaneously. So we have to find new systems for leveraging our shared interest in building the community that we all want in the future. And that is a monumental challenge. And when we take those steps, then it's the role of state government to try to find ways to support what's already happening. Because state government, there's no money big enough, no pot of money big enough that the state could just put that money down and it would suddenly solve our problem.
If anybody has one burning question for Tristan before he leaves.
Solving this problem, which I say is right there in my mind, how do we go online and look at the steps that you're thinking about and the people around you? Where do we find your info?
But in fact, I don't have a whole lot online available around sort of my platform, if you will. And what I will say is that for the last 2 years, I've been having conversations with a wide variety of people around workforce issues, around economic development, about special sort of pockets of the population that are struggling. And what I think needs to happen, and I'm sort of mentally committed myself to that this week, is that I need to find I'm going to help find some partners to get a convening together of a wide group of stakeholders and start to try to talk about what it will take to build a robust network of collaborators who are interested in this. And so that is on my agenda. That's an apolitical facet of my agenda, but it's something that will be coming. And as I said, I mentally committed myself to that this week, recognizing that I can't just wait for somebody else to do it.
District 2. The current state representative running for re-election, Mollie Burke.
Good morning, everyone. Very nice to be here. I am current state representative. I have been for 8 years. I've been on the transportation committee. I've lived in this community for over 40 years. I was a figure skating teacher, art teacher. I started an art program called Art in the Neighborhood, where we bring free art classes to low-income neighborhoods in Brattleboro. I may have taught skating to some of you, or at least, yes, I see one student here, Chris Chapman's daughter, a number of people, children of Tristan.
Very briefly.
One way that I've gotten to know many, many people, and our kids may have been on soccer teams together, or our grandchildren may be in school together right now. So it's pretty wonderful to be in a community where my life is so woven tightly into the life of other people in the community. And it has been an honor to be representing Brattleboro because I love this town and I love my work. So I believe that it's really important to have a philosophy of government. I believe that government exists for the common good, and we need to take care, especially of our most vulnerable. I grew up in a very big family, progressive Catholic family. One of my sisters is here. And we, with the stress on the Catholic social teaching, which is concern for the poor, the less fortunate, economic and social justice. And those things have carried me throughout my life. I've had wonderful parents to lead the way. And I also believe that whatever is politics, the most important things are integrity and honesty. And also believe in responsible government, fiscal, social, and environmental. How we interpret that is very important. There are so many issues facing our state. I mean, I could just go through a whole laundry list of things. In the legislature, we have to specialize. We're on one committee in the House. So I have been on the Transportation Committee. That's been one of my focuses. Economic development ties into so many things around transportation and other things. Working families. How do people get around who don't have vehicles? And of course the environment, which is really, to me, the issue over which everything falls under, because climate change is real, it's here, it's affecting our economy, it's affecting our lives. And what I'm very excited about is, I'll talk about in a minute, the Climate Change Economy Council, which is thinking about how we can move our economy forward while also addressing carbon emissions. I have had the opportunity to have some exciting legislation passed with the help of other people. We don't do anything by ourselves. We need each other in this legislature. We need to create relationships that'll make that happen. I worked with AARP to get complete streets legislation. Complete streets means that any new transportation project has to include the needs of all users of the transportation system. This came out of a conference that AARP had about transporting the public. People said they wanted to, as they age or not even age, want to be able to get around without being dependent upon an automobile. And we are a very auto-dependent society or state. And I also worked on a lot of bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements. Legislation that just passed mandated that when people are passing a vulnerable user, meaning pedestrian bicyclist or someone using a wheelchair, they need to increase clearance to 4 feet. I could go on other things that I've done, but I think I'll just talk about going forward. I want to think about climate change and the economy, and there's some recommendations that came out of this conference, the Climate Change Economy Conference. Transportation for all citizens, keep working on that. I'm on the Public Transit Advisory Board. Women, I'm the co-chair of the Women's Caucus. We need to get parity for women. It would, a lot of women are receiving state services now. With equal pay for women, we could improve that situation and get people off of the state services roles. And affordable childcare is one thing. I've just been talking to childcare people, and we have subsidies for low-income people. Middle-class people are really paying so much of their income in childcare. And I know in Quebec, they have very subsidized childcare. There are studies that show how much that's improved the economy. So that is something that I'm specifically having conversations with right now. I just really love being part of the citizen legislature. I take my role seriously in terms of constituent service. And I also want to say I'm proud to have the endorsement of Bernie Sanders, the Democratic Party, and the Progressive Party. You can find more about me on my website, mollieburke.com. And thank you all for coming. And I especially want to thank Bob Osier, who is a stellar community person and a tireless volunteer.
Adam Salviani is an independent candidate for the state legislature in District 2.
Hello everyone, I'm here to spoil the party as an independent candidate. My name is Adam Salviani. I'm the current chairman of the Town Arts Committee. And I'm also on the board of directors for Brattleboro Community Radio, which hopefully some of you have listened to. And I'm here. I realize I'm a newcomer. I didn't teach ice skating to anybody. I hope you'll consider me as a candidate. I've been in the town government, as I said, and I was considering running for select board. A lot of people were pushing me towards that. But, the more I looked into it, the more I found that really the problems that we have here in Brattleboro start with Montpelier. And that made me think that, despite my good working relationship with Mollie, who's absolutely wonderful. That perhaps we need some changes up in Montpelier. You know, for me, it all starts with the budget and the fact that, you know, Montpelier hasn't seemed to be able to consistently balance their budget, balance their books. And, you know, at first when I saw this, it didn't really mean much to me. But if you look at it, it's actually the stem of a lot of different issues that come out, and a lot of different problems that we face here. You know, we're one of only 10 states this year that couldn't balance our budget. And, you know, we have possible issues with our credit rating coming up too, and that leads to debt and that kind of thing. But, you know, it affects a lot of things. You know, the reason that you people here are being taxed on your Social Security is because we have a budget deficit. And actually, we're the only state in the entire country that doesn't have either a balanced budget amendment or a balanced budget act, which, you know, is quite strange. You know, we've also talked about arts. Tristan talks about it. Mollie's a great advocate for the arts. I know as chairman of the arts here. You know, a lot of politicians, a lot of people say they support the arts, but the arts only receive 0.012% of state funding. And granted, the primary goal of you know, the state is not to fund the arts, but that's 47th in the nation. You know, we tend to think of us here in Brattleboro as, you know, our arts town, and we are. But 47th in the nation isn't that great. It's only $645,000 out of a $5.7 billion budget. That's not too much. You know, I'm a small business owner in addition to serving the town government, and you know, we've been rated as one of the worst states for small businesses for the past 5 years, and that's not good. The Economist gave us an F grade this past year. It has other impacts too. College tuition. You know, I'm running as an independent, but I'm a hardcore Democrat. I have it my whole life. The reason I'm running independent is because I don't think the Democrats have necessarily done the best job up in Montpelier. I'm a hardcore Bernie Sanders Democrat. I followed him around in January in New Hampshire. You know, and perhaps what bothers me most is that, you know, I'm 31 years old. I'm turning 32 in 5 days. And what bothers me most is that my generation is leaving the state at incredibly high numbers. You know, there's 1,000 less kids in our school systems every year. Those families are not taking their kids out of Vermont because there's a lot of opportunity here. They're taking them out because there is no opportunity here. And I've seen it with my friends and people I know. We just lost a great person on the arts committee who was dedicated to this town, but, you know, had a master's degree and was working as a waitress because she couldn't find, you know, the right kind of jobs here. You know, I understand that it's a big task to try to change that, but I want to try to, not just, you know, for, you know, the sake of my generation, but for this town, and for the future of you know, of Vermont. You know, my slogan is building Vermont's future, and we have to build our future because right now the future isn't looking so good, and I know that's what, you know, the representatives will tell you otherwise, and that's understandable. But anyway, thanks so much. I really appreciate the time. I hope you'll consider me, and thanks very much. Appreciate it.
For District 1, Valerie Stuart has been the state representative and is running again this November 8th. Valerie.
I have lived in Brattleboro for over 20 years, and my kids grew up here and went to public school here throughout and have very successful lives now. So I feel like we are working hard on the future and on doing things that will really make our kids job ready and ready for the future, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But just another word about myself. I worked for Youth Services, raising money and doing PR for 8 years. After that, I worked for the Strolling of the Heifers for 4 years. I've also worked as an independent consultant on marketing and communications issues. And lastly, I was very, very involved with the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center for many years as board president and as a board member. So those are kind of my background credentials. In terms of my interests, I'm very much interested in economic development, education and workforce training, and global climate change, and turning that terrible situation to Vermont's advantage. I served first on the Education Committee for 4 years. And the things I'm most proud of that we did there are we passed a free lunch bill, making Vermont the first state in the country to offer free breakfast and lunch. And as many of you, I'm sure, are well aware, one of the most important predictors of kids' future is to make sure that they receive a good early education and throughout, and being hungry is not helpful when one is trying to learn. So that I'm very proud of. We also passed the universal pre-K bill recently, and that entitles all children in Vermont to get some universal learning and prepare them for kindergarten. We have a high rate of underprepared children in Vermont for kindergarten, which is not a good predictor for future outcomes and success in education and throughout life. So I'm very proud of that as well. And then also on the high school and college education spectrum, we passed the Flexible Pathways Bill, and that allows all Vermont students to 2 free college-level courses when they're in high school, so that they can try out college and so that they can see what it's like. And this is very, very important for first-generation college attendees, kids whose parents didn't go to college. And so I'm also, that has been a very good program for getting kids ready for college. We really need to make sure that when kids go to college, they're successful, because research shows that if they need remediation within the first 2 years, they're frequently likely to drop out, which is very sad for everyone. So, and certainly bad for our state. Then in terms of economic development, I'm now on the Commerce Committee. I've been on the Commerce Committee for 2 years. One of the great things we did during the past session, which I think is really a good thing for our state, which of course we're all concerned about, a prosperous future and keeping our young people here, and that sort of thing, is we worked really hard to get some economic development money together so that we can do an economic development marketing campaign in-state and out-of-state, and to attract young people and to attract businesses to the state of Vermont. This will, and we hired 2 firms, and research that they did will be used to create messages and that sort of thing that will hopefully keep young people here. We actually have a lot of jobs here, but we don't necessarily have the people. We have a geographic education kind of mismatch in terms of sometimes we have people that are prepared to do the jobs, but they're in the wrong place for those jobs and that sort of thing. Also, a lot of Vermont students at colleges don't even know we have hundreds of unfilled jobs that if they got the right training, and if they knew early on that the training would help them fill these jobs, that they could stay in our state and do rewarding work at a good wage. So those are some other things I've done in the economic development arena. Also, we passed something very interesting, which is called the Southern Vermont Economic Development Zone, and basically we also gathered together some money this year, $50,000, to enable Bennington County to do some of the great work that Windham County has done in terms of BDCC, really doing a SEDS that enables us to get federal money and that sort of thing. So with this money that will help Bennington County organize the way we have.
In terms of priority, I'm going to ask a question on the first card because it's a question of fact. So if it were Robert Rules of Order, you'd say point of information, right? So the Vermont budget is balanced every year. Is this not true?
This is true.
True. True.
Yes, we aren't constitutionally required to pass.
No, we aren't. No, I said we are not. We are not constitutionally required to pass a balanced budget, but we always do because we're fiscally conservative.
I'd also like to say that Vermont has a AAA bond rating because of how prudently we've managed our finances.
I was under the impression there was a 70 million deficit. The budget was passed, but there was a deficit. That was my understanding, that we were one of 10 states that had that deficit.
We always close that.
We had a that deficit when we came into it with the projection, but we closed it.
And there's no projection for next year for the deficit?
Not yet.
I,
And if there
you
is,
can look at
we'll close
numbers as
it.
much as I can.
We'll close
That was
it.
my,
So another very, very general question, and maybe you have to take this question and assume the truth of what's being assumed. Did I say that right? What? Yes, in other words, don't argue against the assumption in the question. What programs or legislation might be most effective if Phil Scott is elected governor?
Well, we don't know exactly what, but Phil Scott has said that he will hold the budget to 2%. Now, our budget last year went up, state spending 2.4% and overall 3%. And a lot of what's happening with the budget is that federal funding is being pulled back. So how would it affect? I don't know, but I think one of the things is that when the Appropriations Committee puts together a budget and our committees across the hall, I can see these people struggling with, every group is in the hall, please fund me. If we don't fund me, this is going to happen. They do an amazing balancing act of trying to keep everything going. We have incredible needs in this state, and especially when the federal government has been pulling back. So who knows what programs could be affected, but it could be disastrous if we had a limit on what we could spend. We have clean water mandate. We have to, we will be sued by the federal government if we don't address clean water issues. So many things that you cannot say, well, we can only spend 2%. So that's my answer.
Yeah, I don't agree with Phil Scott on a lot of things, but I do think that he's right about that we've kind of saturated our tax base here in Vermont. There's been a lot of tax increases, especially in the last couple of years. My count, there's been 9 tax increases in the last 3 years, including 3 property tax increases in the last 4 years. And he has said that he wants to stop that, and I agree with that. He's also been an advocate for small business. As far as I know, he owns his own small business. I don't actually know what kind, but I think that small business is so important to us here in Brattleboro that we need to address those needs. There's a lot of laws in the books that are not favorable to small business, and there's been a number of newspapers and magazines that have pointed that out. So if he were able to address those issues, I think that'd be a great thing. So we'll see what he does.
If he's elected or not.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I think we've made great progress in the legislature with regarding, in terms of keeping our costs in tandem or relative to our income. This past session, we worked really hard. Every committee recommended programs that they thought could be reduced or, that sort of thing in order to reduce costs. And we're very cognizant of this thing called the alligator mouth, which is the cost rising faster than the income or revenue that we bring into the state. So we're working very hard to close that gap, and we made a lot of progress. We're going to continue to do that. So I think we're all very aware of the fact that we want to make Vermont a very affordable state for our people, and we've worked really hard on it, and we always balance the budget. So.
Okay. There's a real general question here I'm going to skip because it's too local. So, but here's another question. What are the candidates' opinions on ridgeline wind towers and solar panels filling up pastures? I think there's maybe an assumption in that question, but I think you can look at the assumption in the question and answer it.
Complex, as everything is. We have, well, I've talked about climate change. We have a goal of getting 90% renewable by 2050. We have the fastest, more solar jobs per capita than any state. It's been a great boon to our economy. I think, I was just in opening the solar array for the hospital, right down in some place you would never even notice behind New Chapter, in a wonderful field looking out on the new bridge that's being built across the West River. So I think that solar is probably a little less complicated than wind. Wind development is becoming a hot issue coming down into Windham County. I think that we did come up with a sort of a compromise bill at the end of last session about energy siting. And I think that my thinking is evolving on this, I guess I would say. And I think that we say an outright ban on wind development. There are certainly environmental issues. I think that we need to have respectful conversations. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in Grafton and Windham. But it's something that needs to be discussed. We need to know what's the gain, what are we gaining from these particular projects, and how can we be respectful in the dialogue and making our decisions about it. So that's not a really clear answer, but that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I think any kind of green energy is a great thing, and to give Mollie her props, she's been a great advocate for green energy on the Transportation Committee for many years. I think, again, any kind of green energy is a great thing. I think the goal for 2050 is wonderful, and I think that wind is a good thing, but I do see the upside more from an economic sense with solar. I think solar is better, but I would not be against the wind farms that are being talked about here in Vermont. I think that the whole United States should be developing green energy like we're doing here in Vermont, and we are on the cutting edge of that. I used to live in Wales in the United Kingdom, and they have the most renewable energy of any country in Europe, and I hope that we're on that cutting edge too. So, I think it's a great thing no matter what it is. My preference is solar, but I'm not against wind at all.
I think Mollie hit it right on the head in terms of it's a very complex issue. I was initially very much against wind on ridge levels, but I have come around. I think global climate change, as Barack Obama has indicated, is a larger threat to us than practically any other issue that we confront. And the chair of the House Natural Resources and Energy Committee recently had a letter to the editor. It appeared in our paper, and he talked about if people have the right to stop interstates, to stop all sorts of things that are for the greater good, where will we be as a society? I'm very proud of the fact that during the last session we did pass legislation that gives local communities greater say. I understand the heart-wrenching, really difficult situation they're put in, and of course we all feel great empathy about that. But I do think we really owe it to our children and our grandchildren to do something about this. So I think that we really need to continue to take every means we can to solve the global climate change threat.
Let's stay with that. What items in the Reformer article were true, what were untrue? How do you respond to that? How does your reputation as outlined in the media now help or hurt in a legislative position were you to get there?
Yeah, thanks very much for the question. One I certainly expected after that article last week. I was very disappointed by the article. I was interviewed for it and didn't feel that my responses or the references that I provided were included in it in a sufficient way. The majority of that article was based on industry critics' opinions of my publishing company. Just as a background, I've been running a publishing company for 12 years now. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, I am extremely proud of the accomplishments I've had. I started the company with $200 in my dorm room, and it's become this big global company. We've published 1,300 authors from 117 different countries, provided millions of dollars of royalties to those authors. $1.3 million in sales. We sold 1 million books before I turned 30. it's been a great company that any business owner would be proud of, and I'm extremely proud of it, and I'll defend it as long as I can. The problem is that the internet tends to exasperate negativity, and if you're happy about something, you tend not to go on the internet and talk about it as opposed to someone who's upset about it. And that's been very frustrating for me, and I understand it. I'm a writer myself. I publish my own books through the company too. I wouldn't do that if it were a sham or anything like that. My books are very important to me, as any writer will tell you. As far as legislative and the impact it has on me, I don't think it'll have any impact if I get elected. And if anything, I understand a lot more about small businesses and about what they need here in Vermont. There's a big reason why small businesses here in Vermont are doing well despite the government support. They're not getting the support they need. This independent contractor law that came up, that's a big part of it. That hurts small businesses. And I was in the room when Valerie was talking about that, actually with my current opponent. We were all there together. I think that going through this stuff and being a small business owner and being through the fire, if you will, it's going to be a lot of perspective. It's going to be a real world opinion about what it takes to be a small business in this internet age. And I think I can do great things for this state, not just with small business, but with everything. So I appreciate the question, whoever asked it, and I hope I answered it to a good extent. Thank you.
I'm going to take this next question, but I'm going to suggest that the answer is a lightning round. And so the answer can only be, come up with a number. Let's say 3. We've been on a 3 thing, right? 3 districts. Only 3 words in the answer. Only answer in 3 words. Here's the question. For those of you who are already serving in office, what are the 3 things that you personally get out of serving? For those who are not currently serving, what do you want to get out of it? Is that a fair question? 3 things. 3 things that personally you get out of serving as state representative. 3 things that you would like to get if you're not currently serving.
These are just words?
Just 3 words.
I only have a few minutes, that's why I'm saying 3 words.
Integrity, responsibility, and representation. And I say representation because I think, this is a contested election between me and Mollie, which is great, but this is the first contested election in a long time. Most of these elections are not contested, and representing you as constituents, that's important, and I feel that we need to have contested elections in order to do that. So that's my answer. Integrity, responsibility, and representation. Thank you.
I guess we don't have to get up. I have 2. I can't think of the perfect 3rd one, but here's my first 2. Satisfaction, pride. The last one is a 3-word. Hope for the future.
What I get out of serving is I really love helping people. I love it when people get in touch with me and say, hey, I'm having a problem. 3 words. Oh, sorry. That's all right. Assistance, constituent service, policy, and I've done more than 3 words.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for the answers. Thank you for all the work that you do during the year.